The fact is that the hoops he had to jump and the reason he got to be chief could be a lot of animosity among other people in the police department.
Yeah, there's
build up
very
against him,
likely
yeah.
some resentment. Because,
He wasn't supposed to get there.
Exactly. And he sure as hell put the barriers up to keep him from it.
Yeah. Well, good morning. Once again, you have found Talking Racine. And it's the three regulars, Mr. George Myers,
Morning.
Mr. Jim Spotted, our producer and primary conspirator, and I'm Dr. Ken Yorgan, your host. And recently we did a survey, and it came up that Talking Racine audience is the best audience in all of social media. So congratulations to you guys. Somebody else did a survey not too long ago. Yeah. Where was that done? I think it was the city government did a survey, and they were checking on the morale of the police department. Do you recall anything about that?
Yeah, I recall something about that.
And this was done a couple of years ago, and geez, nobody's ever seen it. People have been looking for it, and
Whoa.
here it is.
How does that get on Talking
Here
Racine?
it is.
Oh, yeah, we are a magnet for secret documents, it seems
Yeah.
like.
It was $123,000 for that, by the way. Remember?
Whoa.
And that was never approved by the Common Council. It was just Corey Mason, just pulled it out, and right after he became mayor, roughly, and commissioned that that report.
And boy, some of the results are interesting. It turns out that by and large, the police department is not real happy. Their morale is not good,
Right.
according to this survey. And I can't go through all of the questions and things that they asked about, but just the general overall flavor is that it seems like, well, we were talking just a minute ago about how the initial recruits, and if you've been on the force like a year or less, you're pretty happy with
The
your
chart
situation.
shows that those in the first couple of years are pretty, the green on the chart, it's a good thing. It covers, up to about 60, 70%. They're pretty happy, and the red is real small. And then once you get that past that first couple, what is it? What's the second line? 3 years.
Once
you get 3 years,
five,
all of a sudden,
So this is 1 to 3, I guess.
Point is it's big, and then it says kind of relatively dissatisfied.
Yeah.
And my cynical little evaluation is when they first get on the force and they're just, being policemen, things are going all right. After about 3 years and they find out what's going on between the city and all the political stuff, whoa, all of a sudden all the red shows up and
plus
stays there the rest of the
You've
time.
kind of settled into a job at that point. And now it's your job. You go up, you get up every day, you go to work, and you work. And who the hell loves their job? Not a lot of people.
No.
So if you were Mayor Corey Mason, what would you do with this study? Why wouldn't you release it to the public?
Well, I want to get back into the history a little bit of what this study is. We can go into the details of it. I'm going to put it on the website so people can look at it and go through and make their own evaluations of it. But this was done right after Corey had become mayor, roughly within his first year. Mm-hmm. And he commissioned this report. It came back, and then, of course, it was no one could find it. No one knew anything about it. And then they went and recommissioned or did a fact check.
They sent it back, and they did
right. They didn't like
they wanted to tweak it somehow.
Right.
Or another,
This is the original.
This is the one they hid.
Right.
Nobody could find out about, and we didn't know why. But he wanted to just, like you say, we wanted to just check on this morale thing.
Yeah, right.
Like
so
once
we got into this a little deeper, we wanted to go back into the history of and Chief Howell actually, and let's go back to the beginning and start to realize maybe this report isn't maybe necessarily more of a political tool than it is an actual morale indication of what's happening here. Everything can get fixed. It's just, let's look at some of the history here. I want to go back to 2006.
And just one of the questions I had that I posed to Jim, and I hope you going to answer it, is that why should there be poor morale in the police force? I mean, there's got to be a reason for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and because what I see in this city compared to what I'm hearing on the news, where some mayors don't back up the police at all, police arrest somebody, think they want to get them off the street, and the judge lets them right back on the street. No bail, no nothing. Just go back to what you were doing. There, you could see a reason for a low morale. But police seem to have the support of the mayor. The judges don't just turn people.
No, I think the
loose on
police in
street.
Racine are considered. I don't.
Well,
think
you
there's
see
any real-
these back to bad signs
Yeah.
all over the place.
I don't think there's a big.
Why should the
problem with
morale be so
community.
low? You know.
Well, let's go here. Now I'm going to go back to 2006. Now in 2006, the Fire and Police Commission there were members on there. Charles Johnson, he was a big donor to the Racine Zoo, and he was a fairly well-known individual in the community. Melvin Hardgrove, who ran for mayor,
Yeah.
and he's a pastor. Marie Black, Keith Rogers, and Van Wangard were all
Now,
in the
Van
fire-
Wangard is now a state senator.
Correct. This
Correct.
is 2006.
Former policeman.
Yep.
Now, there were Now this was after Polzine. Now we're going to go back to Chief Polzine. Now he's retiring, and they're looking for a new candidate. Their candidates were Carlos Lopez, Kurt Wallen, Al Days, and Art Howell. Wangard and a few of the other members of the police and fire meet with Kurt Wallen secretly and say, "Listen, how are we going to get you to be the police chief? You've got a master's degree." So they come in and basically announce that the candidate that we're going to hire within the police department has to have a master's degree.
They actually made that a
requirement.
a qualification.
Right.
And you're saying it was done after the fact. In
Well,
other words,
it was done as it
as
rolled
you were
through here.
recruiting people in,
Yeah.
getting more candidates,
Right.
then decided to narrow it down. And,
All right, let's
make
go
it-
look at the candidates.
Well,
back
it
then.
became a solution to the selection.
But at the original start of looking for a candidate, it wasn't put
I
in
don't
there.
think-
Otherwise,
no.
you wouldn't have all those other
Right.
candidates. So
Exactly.
that came in after
Let's
the
look
fact.
at the candidates, though. Carlos Lopez, Al Days, who was black, Art Howell, who was black, and Kurt Wallen, who's white. Kurt Wallen becomes the police chief. Now, he's there for 4 years there. Now, you got to remember, this is, again, it's Racine, so this all behind the scenes is going on. Again, we got, what was it, Proposition Act 10 comes in.
Act 10,
now we're
yeah.
going to go through, and all the public officials are going to, be questioned, and the teachers and all the people that work for government. Wangard comes to Wallen and says, "You know what? You should retire, because if this is pushed through, your retirement's going to be cut, and some of these things aren't going to be a benefit to you." So Kurt Wallen announces his retirement. They move in during his police reign. He had, I would say, probably people that were in his department that he considered good allies of his department. A number
Well,
of them.
everybody develops their own favorite
Relationship,
fellow
right.
employees or...
So during this period of time, they announced that the interim police chief is going to be Smetana. What's his name? Dave, is it?
Smetana.
Dave Smetana.
Smetana. So he becomes the interim. 30 days later, they bring back Kurt Wallen. After he retires, now he comes back as the police chief
I
again.
remember him retiring,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then coming back. They said, "Well, we couldn't find anybody right away."
Right,
but he
we couldn't find
He would
anybody.
come back and temporarily serve as interim.
But we
police
got your
chief.
pension locked in.
Right. We took care of you. You're all taken care of, Kurt. We're gonna take care of you. And they did. And they
Yeah.
did. So he's back now. Now, of course, there's candidates that are going to possibly run for police chief again. Those candidates again are Art Howell,
Carlos Lopez and Treachman.
Treat,
What was Teachman's? What was his first name?
Ronald Treachman. Teachman.
Teachman, yeah.
So he's running.
Teachman,
Now,
yeah.
you got to remember now at this time, Art Howell went and got a master's degree. So now he has a master's degree, and he's a viable candidate for this position. But during this time, you have to remember, Smetana is given a job to investigate Lopez and Howell internally in the police department. Now, you have
How
to,
did he get that job?
well, that's a good question. But an internal investigation now has started, unbeknownst to any of the candidates. So, Teachman is now selected as the candidate for the next police chief in the city of Racine.
Now he wasn't investigated.
No.
Just the other two.
Well, that's what
Well,
they-
he came from out of state,
yeah.
out of town.
I'm sure they looked at his resume and stuff, but there was an internal investigation apparently going on
Yeah, okay.
on the
There
candidates.
couldn't
for
be
him.
an internal
But you have
investigation.
to remember,
A little deeper probe into the history.
Right,
of
and they
But
couldn't
yeah,
they couldn't
candidates.
investigate him because he was from out of town, so they wouldn't be able to. Yeah,
but here's the other thing,
Be very
George. The
hard
first
to.
time around, we were going to hire from within.
right.
This time, we're doing a national search. Now you've got Art, black. You've got Lopez, Hispanic, and you got Teachman, who is obviously white. Well, something happens along the way where Teachman says, you know what, I can't take, he's selected, and then he says, you know what, I can't take the job. I can't take this position. So what do? So the Fire and Police Commission go out and say, well, we're going to recruit for more candidates.
I remember that. I remember
Yeah.
a big.
We
stink
want to
that came
reopen
out,
the
yeah.
process. We don't want to have just two candidates.
Yeah,
It was so phony. I mean, all three of those gentlemen were considered to be qualified and fully
Yeah.
capable of managing that job. But when the guy that they wanted backed out, then they said, well, we should really have more than just two to choose from.
So what happens?
Well, what happens there is a friend
A
of mine,
firestorm.
a former member of this panel, Mr. Ken Lumpkin, says, what in the heck is going on? So he does a little snooping around, and he says, that's bullshit. I mean, they got two qualified candidates, one black, one Hispanic, and they've decided now neither one of them are good enough. We got to have a third guy in there. Well, what does that mean? That you're going to evaluate all three of them equally, or does it look like they're really kind of shuffling those two off to the side? So the NAACP got involved. I even got involved in this, and there was letters going back and forth and stories being written. And Mr. Lumpkin at that time had the Insider newspaper, and he ran a story about the whole process as it was unfolding. And the community got a little pissed off, that this was being managed this way from behind the scenes. So they said, well, you know what? Art's not a bad guy. We're going to have him.
If you
be the
remember
police
right,
chief.
John Dickert then came to the paper, and said, well, you know what, and it was Letney, and I think Scott Letney said, hey, you know what, this is a huge discrimination case if this is going to continue. So Letney, it actually connected, but Dickert goes out and showboats the whole thing and says, we're going to have to get the right guy for the job. Well, he knew that if he would be a huge discrimination case, politically it would look bad for him. Now we're moving into the Democrats here. Now, before that, you had the Republicans who were playing, making sure that everybody's in place. But now you got the Democrats coming in saying, oh, this was bad news. But where were they before? Where was Corey Mason? Where were the rest of the Democrats that watched everything
They
go
were
on?
totally in line,
Exactly.
totally behind
Totally
it.
lined up.
Yeah, no problem.
So Art then is picked as the police chief.
An interesting thing about Art, his nickname is Chief. His nickname was Chief when he was a little kid. The story I've got now, if you're out there, Art, and you're watching, I got anything wrong, feel free to give me a call. But ever since he was a little kid, he was fascinated with the idea of being a policeman, and he wanted to be the chief. Mm-hmm. And he groomed himself. He went through all kinds of schooling. He got his degrees, so on and so forth. He was actually a candidate before, and they said, no, you got to have a master's. Like we just discussed a few minutes ago. That had never been a qualification before, but all of a sudden it was. So in the interim, while Wallen is chief, he goes out and gets his master's degree. No, next time around, you can't use that.
No, we're going to go
as an
national.
excuse.
We're going national.
Well, we got to open this up. We got to find the best talent in the United States.
To Art's credit, he really never cried racism. He never cried,
No.
when he definitely had the opportunity to do that, and he didn't do it, which I give him a lot of credit for. And he did become police chief through a hell of a lot of political maneuvering, by no help of either party if you're going to connect to the parties. But he did it on his own. Here's what happened, though. After he became police chief, remember Spentana, who was hired or doing the internal investigation?
Right.
Well, Howell fires him, which, gee whiz, why? So, but where does he go? He becomes the police chief of Mount Pleasant.
Oh, wow.
And who
So-
becomes the city administrator?
Yeah, out there
Kurt
at
Wallen.
Wallen.
Wallen, yeah.
It's just like, oh,
So
my
we
God.
were exporting police.
So when you talk about bureaucrats protecting bureaucrats,
Oh, it's a big merry-go-round.
yeah. So you're not going to get, so now.
Well,
now,
Wallen knew Teachman.
Yeah.
He and Teachman were buddies.
Right.
So
I mean, this was all inner circle stuff.
how do you think that conversation went? Hey, Ron,
Yeah.
I'm leaving the chief's position over here in Racine. It's a good gig, man.
Right.
You know.
I'll leave some pencils in the drawer for you. I mean, it's just a freaking joke. You know.
Yeah. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes.
Okay, now let's go to current date. Now let's go to the police report.
Yeah.
Or the morale report. Now, who comes in but Corey Mason? Now, Corey Mason knows. Now, you have to remember, you have...
Well, he's a John Dickard protege, too.
Oh, yeah.
And Dickard was against...
there was never any support from Dickard on any of this. And certainly not on a minority police chief. You know, he always talked a good game, but he played politics behind the scene as good as anybody, really. And, of course, Mason, who was sitting up in Madison, you know, twiddling thumbs because he couldn't get nothing done, he's watching Racine thinking, gee, that's a great gig down there if I could get my hands on it. But what does he do the first thing he comes in? He commissions, with no Common Council approval, nothing, he goes out there and gets this report done. $123,000 he takes out. There was some static from some of the aldermen, but really he just...
They kind of retroactively
So
gave
now,
it to
what do
Nod.
I got in my hands? I've got a morale support that it says, geez, Chief, you're not doing a very good job. You know, we're going to hold on to it. We're going to get...
Well, the police aren't happy. Your employees are not happy.
Right.
You know.
But you know it's going to reflect on the police chief.
Oh, absolutely.
But then again, let's go back to the beginning when we go back to the mainstay of Wallen and Polzine's. There's a lot of nepotism in the police department, and there's a lot of people that are
friends and family.
Absolutely. So when you do this morale support, I mean, what do you say? Geez, I don't like this guy. You know, because, boy, I remember in the old days we used to do it like this. You know, and I don't claim to know anything about policing, and there's probably issues that need to be addressed and all that, but there really probably is some swaying of opinion that necessarily maybe isn't quite what it should be. But who grabs it but Corey Mason in a perfect opportunity with Black Lives Matter? You know, I got this great, I'm going to be the, you know, savior of the community here. But how else could he get rid of a black police chief in his community without having that in his hands?
Yeah.
Well,
it's pretty obvious that Art Howell was not going to volunteer to leave that position until he was ready to retire.
Was he ready to retire?
I don't really believe that he was, but I can see how he would have gotten tired of the job and the politics and decided, you know, before this thing blows up in my face.
Would he be afraid of this report?
How do you think that report, you know dang well, that report would be used against him.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it was. Chief, do you want to retire? It'd be a nice time to retire.
Yeah, you're waving the report in his face. Yeah.
You don't think this guy's beyond that? I mean, what the hell? Look what he does to the guy downtown.
If Corey Mason thinks that this will work, that's fine. I mean, I look at the report, and we've looked at the report. It's got some questionable things in there, like you say. How is it that somebody comes into the force, brand new, everything's going fine? The guy has a nice green is well across that chart, and as soon as he gets into the third year, all of a sudden he's less than satisfied, or he or she, you know. Right. So there's something going on. Now you mentioned the family connection, you know, that could be a problem. The point being is that let's suppose that is part of the problem. In other words, once they get in there, they find out about the politics and this type of stuff. That's not necessarily Howell's fault because, well, I'm connected to Polzine and Wallen, you know, and I like them, and we got this guy Howell up there, you know. That's not necessarily anything that the Howell is doing bad. But unless somebody goes in there and looks at the report and figures it out, it's still a good weapon. That's all I'm saying.
Well, it's very, very subjective. So it does have some value, you know. I mean, it does absolutely reveal that there's some disgruntlement down at the police department. No question about it.
But is it valid disgruntlement? There's that, and the question is, why are they disgruntled? I mean, sometimes people just hate their job because it could be
they hate the boss for whatever reason.
Or let's just say I'm Corey Mason, and I really want to get to the bottom of this. What if I did one and said, all right, how many people are related here? How many are from the old police?
Well, that's the thing. You got to get.
You got to dig in a little deeper.
Yeah.
To throw this out there, and then this is the public red meat. Now I know it's out there being circulated on social media and stuff that this report is, and But I wanted to kind of get into the little bit of the back history of this. And I mean, the chief could be doing a great job, he could be doing a crappy job. That I really don't know. The fact is that the hoops he had to jump and the reason he got to be chief could be a lot of animosity among other people in the police department.
Yeah, there's
build up
very
against him,
likely
yeah.
some resentment. Because,
He wasn't supposed to get there.
Exactly. And he sure as hell put the barriers up to keep him from it.
Yeah. So
And
who
he-
was all involved? You don't know everybody that's involved. We know some of the players.
We do.
But we don't know the hearts and minds of the individual
Right.
employees.
And, we can go in and you can dig through it all. But here's the thing. If you really want to get a study, find out the politics within the politics. What Corey's doing is using this report as a way to get rid of Howell and to bring in his own person or people or who knows what he's got planned. Corey is a very poor manager. He thinks he's just got this God mentality. I can do anything because I am who I am. But he really can't run a police department. He can't run a public works department.
Well, he's
he
a
can't
classic micromanager.
Yeah, he's absolutely that. So what you end up doing is running a city down, and it becomes poor management, and you run into multiple chaotic situations. And his staff is, which I would like to talk a little bit before the show ends, is basically, yes people.
Yeah, that's the thing. And one of the things that makes the use of this report suspicious, and your suspicion valid, is you look at this recent police task force that Corey Mason has set up, which is obviously a power grab. So why not add a little bit more to the power grab by getting rid of the chief by using this report? I mean, it kind of fits into the puzzle.
Yeah.
is the
Well,
thing I'm
if you
saying.
get to pick the people that are going to be on that task force, and if you chair the task force, you think you're going to have any influence
No,
over
that was a terrible task force. It's just, and that might have had much to do with the retirement as anything. It just.
Well, do you think that task force won't use this? You don't think some of these people...
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I don't know about
Yeah,
that, but what I think is that the task force is going to reinforce whatever image you want to create with this.
Correct.
If you want to create incompetence or dissatisfaction with the chief, this is a good weapon to do that. Even though it really doesn't apply, a lot of it doesn't apply to things that the chief has control over.
Yeah.
So, but this, and then along with the task force will come by and say, well, there's problems. There's
No.
Right.
people are being abused, and which is true.
And
But I mean,
well-
they'll create a.
Well, one
they'll
of the
say
things-
under his leadership, we've got these problems.
Right.
And they're all Corey Mason people on that task force, So if Corey Mason wants to get control of the police force, well, why not use this task force as a tool to do it? So he get really
So he
his
can sit
people
back.
on that commission.
Now think about it for a second. The first thing the first really report was done was this one.
Yeah.
This was the first one that his office did, or when he
Yeah.
became mayor, he did.
Now, did the second one that he commissioned, did that ever be?
That's out there too, yeah. But it's a whitewash of this one. But that was put out because the pressure was on to put something out.
Yeah.
This one they didn't want to put out. They had to put something out because you had Sandy Widener, you had Henry Perez, you had other people asking, "Where's this report? Where's this report?" Well, when the report got put out, it was like, well, it's kind of whitewashed on a little bit of what this was. This one comes in. I mean, hell, some of those are 80% negative on certain issues. I mean, there's stuff in there that says, well, the building is unsafe and we've got health and safety, the locker room isn't big enough. Okay, that's something
Yeah.
that Chief Kite can't control. But here's the thing, it's a tool that Corey Mason has used. Corey Mason knew everything that went along the line, knew all the history of what went on. And this, saver, he's going to save Black Lives Matter and he's going to be all this for the minority community. It's all bullshit. It's all politics.
Mm-hmm.
And he has no indication of any of. If he had it, he'd have done it. And Dicker was the same way. So you've got poor management in the last two mayors.
Well, you got to keep things as they are, but make it look like you're trying to change them.
Yeah, we're going to make things better, and I just don't see that.
Well, he's got a good sales staff down there. He's got 5 people working for him now, 4 or
exactly.
5 people working
So, I mean,
full-time.
we get a little critical, but the fact is that the facts point to it. And,
No, he's just bringing in all this national politics stuff. If we're going to do anything in Racine, we got to get it out of there. Now, right now, it's the Democrats that are bringing in their ideology, their old Green New Deal. How he's killing these big building projects by bringing in that type of junk. This is this left wing politics that's being brought in. But we don't want to forget that prior to that, the council, go back 6 or 8 years, and the council was dominated by Republicans. There were some big name Republicans in there. And they didn't do anything either to straighten things out. They were contributing to the mess too. Somehow we've got to get these ideologies out, including the very unlikely event that some libertarian stuff gets in there. And I'm a libertarian, and I tell you what, it doesn't belong in the city council. No.
Well, all of these positions in the city they're described as nonpartisan, which means you're not supposed to be a Republican, a Democrat, a libertarian, or a farmer socialist, or anything else. Just a person.
The communities, the municipalities are run more akin to like a private business would be. Now, it's not exactly like that, but it's along those lines.
It isn't a corporation.
Well, it's called a municipal corporation too. So, and it's got some very specific jobs that are relatively easy to do. And the main one being to keep the streets safe. So the businesses can conduct themselves, and you're not being harassed by protection rackets and other types of things that have happened in the past in this country.
And pick up the garbage.
Yeah, pick up the garbage.
Fix the streets.
All right, I'm going to throw something out.
Easy stuff.
What do you think is going to happen as far as the mayor can pick the police chief? What do you think? How do you think this is going to happen? How are they going to recruit? Are they going to bring from within, or are they going to go out nationally and look for a police chief?
Oh, I think they probably already have a plan. I think they had a plan long before Art Howell announced his retirement.
Mm-hmm. I would say the person is picked, and it's going to be a strong ally of Corey Mason. That's
Locally, or you think it's going to be somebody brought in from somewhere else?
Well, if it's going to be from someplace else, it's not going to go very far, because I don't think Corey Mason's friendships and allies go that far, unless he's really hooked into some national stuff.
Oh,
in which case, somebody's picked it up from the National Democrat Party or something. He said, "We want this guy. He's over in Detroit right now, but bring him to Racine." Yeah. That's a possibility. I'm just fathoming it as a possibility, though.
Okay, I got a question. What do you think the attitude of the regular rank and file police department and administration, what do they think of Mayor Mason and his staff? What do you think the attitude is?
I don't think they're real fond of him, quite honestly. I know that there's unrest in City Hall. And I have talked to some policemen, not a lot, but, a few. And I haven't heard anybody say, wow, man, I'm glad Corey Mason is mayor. It's more like, what do we have to do to get rid of this guy? Because he went after their pensions and after their benefits package, and there's a lot of unhappiness with the mayor there. So I can see him probably looking for somebody who will come in and lay the law down for the police department.
I would like to think that the police also didn't like the idea of them maybe having to go around and arrest people in their businesses because there were too many people sitting at a table who didn't have their masks on. Now, and I may be wrong on that, but I think there's a possibility that that's going on. There's a lot of unrest about these masks and all these regulations coming from Dottie Bowersox, which is still coming from City Hall.
Well, you talk to the average policeman, I've talked to some through the years, and it's that kind of busy work, like parking meters, speed traps, that kind of crap. Cops don't like doing that.
I'm glad to hear that.
Do you think the mayor supports the police department? I support the police department, this mayor.
I think he'd like to control the police department. I don't know about supporting. Supporting is a whole different relationship.
That's what I'm asking,
I don't think
some mayors
I don't know that he would support it, because we saw how Racine kind of escaped the rioting downtown. The Thelma Orr house got burnt down. I think there was some limitations on the damages to the stores and stuff. I don't know how Mason would have reacted if that had gone on downtown. I don't know what his reaction was to the Thelma Orr house. I don't know if he was in there. Did he do any photo ops over there of being concerned about it at all?
Well, and there was somebody from outside of the community that was the primary.
There's no question about that. That's in every city. I mean, I hear people in Chicago I hear listen to the station there, and they're saying people from Indiana are coming up and causing these riots. You listen to Indiana, they're coming from Chicago to our riots, you know. So like they're going from, they're trading rioters. I don't want to riot in my hometown, but I'll go to the next state and do it.
Would you guys want to go start a riot somewhere?
Yeah, if we're going to
do all the riot.
I just don't want to do it in my house.
Yeah. Well,
I'll go
before
the other guy's house.
Before we plan that, because I know we'll get a lot of you guys wanting to volunteer to come with us. But why don't you saw something really interesting on the Real Racine magazine that we were talking about.
I don't know
before.
if you people have seen this. This is a truly marvelous magazine. As I read through this, it's just beautiful. I mean, it makes Racine
Well done,
look
yeah.
really great. I mean, it's just
You
great.
thought it was about a different town, right?
Yeah, you know, and Dimple, boy, she got a cool ad in here. You know, who has recently been attacked, by the way, and not getting any money on the COVID thing. But it is just great. But as I'm looking through the pictures, I found that there's something missing in these pictures, and I went through all of them with people, and I thought, you know, why would they be leaving that out? You know, it just
Tell
totally
him, George.
missing.
Just tell him.
Nobody's wearing a mask. there's not a mask in the whole thing, you know. And I think, well, why not? I mean, if they took some current pictures and put in there, and they do these, this thing is not all just run out of history, you know. If they did that and showed a bunch of masks, people would say, "What do we want to go to Racine for?"
Yeah.
Well,
they're all in
why
masks,
shouldn't they
you know?
have an accurate portrayal? I mean, why not?
Well, yeah,
Kringle lifting the mask and eating Kringle?
yeah.
On the beach.
It's not good.
A good glass of water next to it.
And I think Corey Mason at least seems to be a little in touch with it, maybe, with this headline, Mason mulls mask mandate. Now that's
a good alliteration.
It's a little bit. Yeah.
At Journal Times, just can't beat them.
They think they're clever with that. But the thing was, and Corey Mason did his own survey too. He on his Facebook people had all these comments, and almost everybody was for it. He had 44 Facebook users.
Yeah.
Well, I immediately went to the Journal Times. I thought, well, let's see what the comments is like on this article. And he's down about 20 points on that one. I think he's got down about 20. He's about 1 in 5 people.
See, he can't put a mask thing in because he gets hammered so hard from this business community that he's throwing his trial balloon out there to say, okay, well, I'm going to think about it. I'm not going to do it. You know, we're going to find out how much static I get. Yeah. Believe me, he knows that he starts that, those businesses are going to go.
And that's right. That's the thing. And this will, if he goes with that, this thing is going to be a total farce. And I challenge the writers, the great writers to this. In your next issue, put all the people with masks in it and see what your magazine looks like. And you know what they're going to find out? No, can't do that. That's not going to promote the city.
All
this
right.
doesn't promote the city.
Before we start getting phone calls, asking where the riot is going to be, forming carpools and stuff, we're going to take off. We've had it for today. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next week.